The Big Red Machine is often called the greatest baseball team of all time. In 1975, they won 108 games, and manager Sparky Anderson said they just toyed with the league all year long. They found themselves in the 75 World Series, which is often called the greatest of all time, as it featured 7 future position Hall of Famers. That's if you count Pete Rose anyway. Bench, Perez, Morgan, Rose, Fisk, Rice, and Yastrzemski. They found themselves back in the World Series the following year after winning 102 games, and they became the only team in baseball history to sweep a multi-tier playoff run. This team was so great that they won 6 division titles in the 70s, 4 pennants, and they capped it off with World Series victories in 75 and 76. Between 1970 and 79, the Big Red Machine compiled 953 wins, an average of 95 wins a season. And while their pitching staff has been grossly underrated over the years, it's the Great Eight who are celebrated today as perhaps the greatest lineup ever assembled. At catcher was future Hall of Famer Johnny Bench. In 1970, at age 22, he became the youngest player ever to win the NL MVP award. He was the first catcher in history to lead the league in home runs. Bench has widely been regarded as the greatest catcher of all time, and Major League Baseball acknowledged that by naming him to the all-time team. At first base was another future Hall of Famer in Tony Perez. Perez was an RBI machine who drove in 100 runs 7 times. He also drove in 90 runs every year between 1967 and 1977. Big Doggy is often been called the heart and soul of the Big Red Machine. Second base featured another future Hall of Famer in Joe Morgan. When the Reds won the World Series in 75 and 76, Morgan was at the top of his game, winning the MVP each year. Little Joe is one of only 12 players in baseball history to post a season WAR of 11 or greater. Third base featured Pete Rose. The scouting report said Rose can't run, hit, throw, or field. All Rose can do is hustle. While Charlie Hustle en route to 4,256 hits, won 3 batting titles, and became Major League Baseball's all-time hit king. Shortstop featured Dave Concepcion. In 2020, writer Dan Holmes called Concepcion and Morgan the number 3 greatest double-play duo of all time. Each of them won 5 Gold Gloves. He was the MVP of the 1982 All-Star Game, hitting a home run off of Dennis Eckersley, a shot that he called beforehand in the dugout to a teammate. Left field featured Big George Foster. One columnist said it is against Foster's convictions to smoke, drink, chew, curse, or leave men on base. He led the league in RBIs 3 times, each time driving in more than 120 runs. He totaled over 1,200 RBIs in his career. Cesar Geronimo played center field, and he was known for his great arm and his exceptional range. As an example, he led the league in outfield putouts in 1975 with 408, the first of his 4 Gold Gloves that he collected in center field. Right field featured Ken Griffey Sr. Morgan said Griffey was the best fastball hitter he had ever seen. Morgan added, it did not matter where you pitched him, in, out, up, or down, he was always able to handle the heat. He had speed, he could throw, he was smart in the outfield, and he never missed a cutoff man. The Great Eight has collected some crazy hardware. Bench, Morgan, and Rose were all named to the All-Century team. And of course, the Hall of Fame is a discussion all to itself. Now, as we move forward in this Three-part series of the Big Red Machine, the Hall of Fame issue, is going to become very important. In part 2, we will compare this lineup to the greatest lineups of all time. As you look at this visual, bench Perez, Morgan, and if we include Rose, because we know he's a Hall of Fame talent, this is the only lineup to ever win a World Series that featured 4 position Hall of Fame players that were voted in by the Baseball Writers of America, not by the Veterans Committee. That shows the strength of this lineup with 4 Hall of Famers that were absolute no-doubters to the writers. As a team, 7 of the players received Hall of Fame votes, everyone except for Cesar Geronimo. As a Reds organization, they have put all 8 of these players into their Hall of Fame, and the entire infield has their numbers retired with the Reds organization. 4 of the 8 players even won the league MVP for a total of 6 times nabbing this award. Rose and Foster were even runner-up one time. When you look at top 5 voting, 6 players finished in the top 5 for a total of 18 times, with Rose leading the way with 5 of those. When you look at top 10 voting, 31 total times. Rose was a top 10 MVP candidate 10 times. The Reds completely dominated this award in the 70s, taking it 6 times as previously stated, and being in the top 10 9 of 10 times. Look at 1970 and 1973. 3 players finished in the top 7 in each of those years. And in 1976, it just got better. 4 players finished in the top 8 of the voting. I mean, this is just ridiculous when you start to look at the wealth of talent on this team. 2 of these guys were Rookie of the Year with Bench and Rose. Morgan was a runner-up for Rookie of the Year. Look at this. This is a crazy number right here. 65 total All-Star selections with Rose and Bench and Morgan all over 10. And in 1976, 5 of these guys started the All-Star game. And look at this. 5 of them won the All-Star MVP award at some point. And Rose and Bench, who didn't, are the guys who were named MVP in the World Series in 75 and 76. I love this one. 26 Gold Gloves with Bench leading the way with 10. And here's strength up the middle defined. Bench, Morgan, Concepcion, Geronimo winning the Gold Glove 4 years in a row. That is strength up the middle. So look at these totals. 6 league MVP awards, 5 All-Star Game MVPs, 2 World Series MVPs, 2 Rookie of the Years, 65 All-Star Game appearances, and 26 Gold Gloves. Looking at their career totals is equally impressive. All 8 players played at least 15 seasons in the league, and they each played at least 1,500 games, putting them in the top 750 of all time. 5 of these players scored at least 1,000 runs, with Foster and Concepcion just barely on the outside of that. 6 of the players had 2,000 hits, with Foster only being 75 away from that number. And look at this, 7 of them have 300 doubles. I mean, this is just getting kind of crazy at some point. Rose is second all-time in doubles. Everyone except for Bench is on this list for triples, being in the top 800 all-time. And 4 of them are in the top 225 of all-time in home runs, with Bench leading the way with 389 on this list. 5 of them have over 1,000 RBIs. And look at Concepcion's, it got 950. And he's a borderline Hall of Famer that we'll talk about in another video. And I love what this graphic reminds us of. Besides the power of Bench, Perez, and Foster, this is a fast team. Morgan and Griffey and even Geronimo in center field, these guys could run. 200 stolen bases for 3 of them, and Rose is just 2 away from that. I mean, what a balanced lineup that this really is. And look at all these walks. Morgan is 5th all-time in walks with over 1,800. Everyone but Geronimo is on that list. 3,000 total bases. Again, everyone except for Geronimo. Rose comes in 9th all-time in total bases. 700 extra base hits for 5 players. That puts him in the top 225 of all time. And look at these combined totals. I mean, it's kind of hard to grasp. Games played over 19,000. And almost 19,000 hits, 1,800 home runs, almost 9,000 RBIs, 1,600 stolen bases. It's just hard to grasp the totals that these 8 players put up. And let's look at some of their career averages. 5 guys in the top 1,000 in batting average of all time. 5 more in the top 1,000 in on base percentage. Morgan's at 392. 5 players in top 1,000 in slugging percentage. And 6 players in the top 1,000 in OPS. And the same 6 players in the top 500 of OPS plus. I really love how Jaws ranks players by position, and they shows here that Bench is the #1 ranked catcher of all time. Morgan's the #4 ranked second baseman of all time. They've got Rose in left field for Jaws, 5th all time in left field. Here's WAR, whether you like Fangraphs or whether you like Baseball Reference, the 4 Hall of Famers, if you're counting Rose, all have a WAR of over 50. And this might be a number that people don't look at a lot. It's the power speed number. 4 players ranking in the top 200 of all time, with Joe Morgan coming in 6th best ever. Total runs created has 5 players listed, with Rose creating over 2,200 runs. It's just amazing. And I love looking at standard batting season leaders. You know, when you open up a player's profile in Baseball Reference, it'll show if they've led the league in something. It places it in bold italics. So here's an example. You look at Joe Morgan's profile, and he led the league 26 different times in various categories. You see that 6 of the Reds led the league in something at some point. Rose 38 different times. Bench and Foster 11 times. This is just a fun stat to look at when you're looking at players. Well, that's the Great 8, and while manager Sparky Anderson loved to shuffle the lineup from time to time, we probably all have our favorite, and here's mine. Rose, Griffey, Morgan, and then here comes the Thunder and Bench, Perez, and Foster, followed up with Concepcion and Geronimo. They are indeed the Great 8, the greatest lineup we've ever seen in the history of baseball. Thanks for watching. And remember to like and subscribe. Thanks so much.